In WildRift, barely anything ever changes when it comes to tier lists. Most of the broken champions remain broken unless Riot thinks, well, it's time to kill those champions. But that is not the case for the Baron lane, and we start right with that lane, and we start with Fiora. Fiora is one of the most broken champions there is when it comes to the Baron lane pressure. Barely has any bad matchups outside of ranged matchups and outscales pretty much anyone in the game in the side lane. Nothing can really come close to this champion. Similar to that, we also have Jax and Camille. These champions also have very high laning pressure and as well side lane pressure. However, Camille is one of the most broken competitive picks because she allows you to just use the Hextech ultimatum to just lock somebody down and kill them on cooldown. That is something that is very broken. Jax, on the other hand, will be a split push demon and just go down side lane. For the other champions, we have very high laning pressure or just insane scaling or teamfight capabilities. It's not necessarily just a power ranking within the tiers, it's just overall how good these champions perform and why and how consistent you can be with these champions in most scenarios. So if you see Set on a very high win rate or just very high in this tier list, it's not necessarily because he's a very powerful laner, but because he's so intuitive and easy to play during a teamfight, where you just locate the tankiest target, throw them into the enemy team, and just blow everyone up. Now going over to the tank tier, we have Dr. Mundo. This champion can just safely farm from range with his cleaver without any worry on his mind. San is also quite interesting to see because this champion is similar or akin to Jax in the sense that you can just run down side lane, and if you played well with the ultimate ability, you will have a wonderful time running down the side lane. For the competitive environment, Ornn is more of a flex pick, and Shen as well, where you have Ornn in the support into the Baron lane and Shen in the jungle and as well the Baron lane, but you cannot really blind pick either of these champions because the carry champions are way too powerful and just run over you with ease. However, if you want to play one of these tank champions, I think Volibear is probably a little bit underrated and you can put him into S tier because this champion really packs a punch and doesn't really have that many troubles into many of the other meta top laners unless you're very efficient in playing them. Another key piece of advice here is to mention that these tank top laners are very easy to play, they are very tanky and durable and therefore allow you to make many mistakes compared to the other carry top laners, because making mistakes on these champions can cost you very heavily and you do not want to have that happen to you. For the jungle list, we start with the carry tier. Here we have 5 champions that are just beyond broken compared to anything else. Number 1 is Lee Sin, number 2 is Hecarim, number 3 is going to be Evelynn, number 4 is going to be Talon, and number 5 is going to be, you guessed it right, Mr. Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix is probably the weakest out of all of these champions, however will always shine in a solo queue environment simply because he always gets to reset on these people in solo queue. They always isolate, they always get themselves killed, and it's so easy to just get advantages through him. Out of all these 5 champions, probably Talon has the most unique game style compared to all the other champions where you also need to hit specific combos. Evelynn has the different playstyle in the sense that she plays different from a normal AD bruiser, and every other champion is just, well, you just go in. Lee Sin just jumps in, kicks you into the face and one-taps you. Hecarim just doesn't care about anything, it's probably the easiest champion out of all of these, and yeah, you just run in and survive. Champions that are quite underrated in most lists or in most scenarios is, for example, Xin Zhao and Vi. Even Kayn is a lot of, he's pretty much underrated many times. Also other champions like Gragas and Darius, all these champions require certain conditions and then they just become very good. However, if we were to differentiate between these tiers as well, like between S+, S, and S-, then you would see, for example, Diana, Vi in the S- tier, and champions like, for example, Xin Zhao in the S+, and in the super broken, Giga Omega broken tier, similar to Lee Sin, you would have Evelynn, Lee Sin, Talon, and Hecarim. And Kha'Zix would be in the S+ tier. But still, all these champions are very broken, and you should have them on your radar. And if you're wondering, why the hell is Kayle on the lowest tier? I'll quickly tell you why. The reason why in a normal environment, Kayle should not be performing well, so I do not want to promote this pick because it's very toxic towards how you play the game. But if you are, in fact, a solo queue enjoyer, and you like to scale until 18, 19, 20 minutes, and just farm till then and see your entire map burn, you're welcome to play Kayle. but you need to carry late game and it will not always happen, so you have to spend a lot of games climbing. For the tank department, we have the Volley Bear, the chunky gamer of death. He can disable towers, not the Nexus anymore by the way, but he's very durable, very annoying to deal with, has a decent clear and very good dueling potential. The biggest issue for him is, however, just reaching people. Outside of running at them and jumping at them once, he has big difficulties, but if he gets close, he will one-tap you. And if you want to put Nautilus into the tank tier, you can do so in the S tier, however you can also put him into the carry tier for S tier, same for Darwin. Both of these champions are interchangeable when it comes to carrying or tanking, so you can choose whatever you want. All of this works. And again, the same principle applies. Tanks are useful whatever you do simply because you're a meat shield, and for carries you need to be more, let's say, adept in playing them to have proper impact, so keep all of this in mind. For the mid lane, I'll just quickly give you the rundown on what champion you want to play the most. For example, in the mage tier, you can always log in Aurelion Sol unless the enemy has, for example, a Zed. You can also just always pick Zoe, and you can always pick Syndra. A very good pick is also Lux most of the time. Champions such as Vladimir, Orianna, and in Twisted Fate usually take too long to scale, so they're weaker than these peers that come online earlier. However, if you hit the late game with Vladimir or be it Twisted Fate, you will see how easy the game becomes. Champions in the A tier are less consistent in doing so and have a way harder time of either converting leads in lane or converting lane into leads and then the leads into the map pressure. For the assassin tier, we have Kassadin as the best pick, and below this we have Talon. He is still struggling quite a lot in comparison to, for example, his jungle performance, because Demon Knight is a big differential. However, if played well, he has very high impact because you can just run around the map and be very efficient. Other champions that are pretty decent for the mid lane is, for example, Mr. Fizz. The damage is quite insane, and there's a new build coming up for the Akali, which is going to be the tank build, which is going to be, well, kind of broken and kind of unkillable. So we might be seeing Akali rise in, well, power levels. However, nothing can really compare with Kassadin, because in fact Kassadin is never punished in solo queue, always scales, on level 5 can kill you, and is a very interesting champion. If there's one pick however that I would put higher in this list, or more like conditional, like if you're a Pyke one trick, you will have high success, so just putting him into S tier would be okay, and if you're a Zed, it's just a conditional pick, and all the other picks like Katarina, or for example Echo, are just picks you should either shy away from, or you need to be a one trick to make them work properly. Now let's move over to the other tier. Here we have Draven as the probably best AD carry you can pick in mid lane in terms of pressure. You can stomp lane, you can accelerate everything, and just make sure you win the game for free. Other champions that are very powerful in the sense of lane pressure are, for example, Jace, Yasuo, and champions such as Teemo, Irelia, and Corki are a bit weird. Like for Irelia, you have to just go in giga deep and hope you survive because you have very high damage, but if you fail, you just die. But on the bright side, even if you, let's say, fall behind, you still kill one-on-one. But in teamfights, your champion is very hard to pilot because you just get denied once within your charge and then you just don't do anything anymore. Other champions, such as Teemo, are, for example, pretty decent into Twisted Fate, denying him his card. And another cool thing for scaling in mid lane is just Tristana and Corki making it so easy, but champions such as Lucian, Jace, and Akshan are very good if you want to go for proactive plays early game, allowing your team to just, well, invade early, just make sure the game is accelerated, etc, etc. But if you pick any type of AD carry mid lane in a solo queue environment, please make sure to ban Yasuo, I always say the same. Now for the AD carries, the by far best AD carry right now for solo queue is going to be Lucian because you can actually gain leads during the laning phase way too many times due to the support differential. People in bot lane just tend to die 24/7 and Lucian is pretty good at punishing the enemy champions for doing so. Other champions that are very powerful and very underrated is, for example, Samira, but Samira suffers too many times from the support differential, so you need to be really keen on having an engaged support for you that does the work and you just go in and clean up. Champions that are pretty okay if you want to snowball is, for example, Draven. Draven stomps most of the laners by simply having too much damage, but you only get to deal that damage if you're one trick and understand how his axes function. Other champions, for example like Tristana and Kai'Sa, have a very bad laning phase, probably the weakest laning phase out of all the champions in the S tier, but they have insane scaling. Caitlyn needs to win lane, Jhin is a lane bully that kind of struggles with tanks, Ezreal needs to, well, have some skill to win the game, and Xayah is just a complete neutralizer similar to Corki. For scaling purposes, I would even put Zari into the S tier, but Zari really struggles in the laning phase and needs her ultimate to be functional. Within her ultimate's timer, as well as getting out of lane, she then scales very brutally. If you want to be more of a utility AD carry or just a spellcaster AD carry, please take a look at Miss Fortune, Ashe, and Corki, because these champions are relatively easy to play and powerful in their own regard for their own reasons. For example, Corki has poke and package, Miss Fortune has poke and zone control with the ultimate, Ashe has poke, slow, and obviously an ability that no other AD carry has access to, which is long range engage, so keep that in mind. All the other champions in the B tier you should rather stay away from unless you are one trick or you want to play duo in specific scenarios. For the mage tier we have Syndra as the best mage down here. Other than this we have Ziggs and all the other picks. Literally all the other picks are just conditional. Like Vex into very movement heavy champions, Lux is pretty decent still, whatever happens it's okay. Zoe needs to have setup, Orianna needs to play into melee champions, Veigar needs to play into melee champions, Karma kind of wants another carry on her team so she can be like an assistant carry that just shields and deals damage at the same time, and Seraphine wants to usually play into all in or have all in on her team so she can follow up with her ult or deny a fight with her own ult. Champions in the A tier usually struggle a lot because they don't have enough damage or are low-key borderline suicidal with Mr. Brand just jumping in, and you know what happens if a Brand flashes in and pops the ultimate. Somebody dies, but will it be the Brand or will it be the enemy team? You will find out shortly after. Now last but not least we have the support tier list, and here we have Leona into the engaged tier. This champion is probably the most consistent, most annoying and most tanky out of all of these choices that deals way too much damage. Well, unless you take Nautilus and Set's fully charged second ability. However, the issue with Leona is most of the time her ultimate ability. Just tagging an enemy allows you to just stun them, and even though just their pinky toe is inside of the circle of the ultimate solar flare, they still get stunned, which happens so many times to me. So to avoid this, you kind of always have to flash, but with the surge of Hex Flash, which is also used on AD carries now a lot, it gets a little bit easier to avoid certain death from Leona, but she has also access to that ability or that summoner spell, so well, you know what happens to you. Other champions such as Nautilus are very much overtuned and broken and provide you with proper setup, and Thresh just deals way too much damage. So yeah, within the S tier you have higher consistency across the board compared to, for example, the A tier, but the A tier in a competitive environment again is used for flexible picks or map or global pressure, which in normal solo queue is not as powerful. And in the B tier, well, I don't even know what these champions are even doing there, because who plays these champions and what do these champions even do? Because compared to all the other champions in the higher tier, they're just substantially weaker. Now for the Protect tier. I do not know why people do not constantly put Lulu into probably the highest Protect tier ever, because this champion's bonus damage to the AD carry is quite absurd, and the damage as well. Like, she has very high lane pressure with the damage, very high peel with the tools she has, and grants the AD carry infinite damage. All the other champions cannot really remotely get close outside of Yuumi, making lane literally impossible unless you have certain champions that fully commit and fully all in, like for example Leona and Varys, Leona and Samira, like these type of champions. And if you fail the all-in against Yuumi, you automatically lose lane. But the big difference here would then be that the map movements cannot be necessarily countered by the Yuumi, since she can't follow up as fast, and that might be similar to a Lulu. However, other champions, for example Braum, is very good into champions that are projectile based or have certain ultimates like On ultimate that can be blocked, that Braum just completely denies, and if Braum uses his shield, the AD carry behind Braum can just freely do damage, while the enemy AD carry can't even hit through Braum. Champions such as Soraka really scale really powerful with bruises on a team, making them basically invulnerable, and Janna is good if you have enemy team that wants to jump into you and you can just deny them. Nami is more of a lane pressure support that wants to win. Like, if she doesn't win lane, she feels kind of weird. Seraphine is again similar to a Janna, just with a lot more damage. Sona can't lane, similar to Morgana, but scales into the mid to late game way better than a Morgana could ever do. So theoretically speaking, with the solo queue we have in place, most of the time you could even see Sona in the S tier, even though this champion is really not that good. However, allowing Sona to hit late game similar to Kayle makes it very problematic to play into her, because she's basically a late game Soraka that provides AoE peel with the power of a passive stun and her ultimate ability. And Shen is usually paired up, if you want to pick Shen, it's more like a flex pick, and Narcissus with a Senna. For the carry support here, we have Pyke as the best champion available. This champion is just broken, is what it is, even if the win rate on the Chinese server looks a little bit lower, but this champion is busted. Similar busted are also Ashe, Karma, Lux, and Senna. All these champions have their own reasons why they're powerful. Senna is a very powerful laning champion, provides you with healing, setup, also opens up a lot of more bot lane compositions and draft flexibility. Lux is an annoying damage monster that one-taps you whatever you do at any point of the game just by buying Boots of Mana. Ashe is an annoying bully, as well as allowing her to just engage fights from afar. And Karma is a very powerful all-in, given her second ability's nature, and peel support at the same time. She has poke, she has peel, she basically has everything outside of healing unless you go for Harmonic Echoes. And for the A tier, I really do not know if you want to pick any of these champions as of right now, unless you want to have some fun. I think all the champions above are way stronger, and there's no reason to pick the lower tier champions, but if you want to have fun, feel free to pick these champions. And that concludes today's video. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and see you soon for more Rift Guides content.